Welcome to a special yours truly dinner with yours truly Adrian Hanna, dragon, androgynous, pansexual artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, honest, and theorist, and strategist. And this extra round, we're gonna be just doing a little bit of that dinner. Gonna commence with gratitude, and we're just gonna focus on geopolitics. As in, if you don't know that, I am an independent geopolitical, theoretical, analyst, and theorist, and strategist, and geopolitics is my special interest. You know, I have this condition called Asperger's, being that I'm an Aspie, I'm neurodivergent, and so we Aspies, being that we're part of less than 1% of the population, or less than half of a percentile, about 0.44% of the population. So there's not a lot of Aspies in the world, just like myself, and we have certain difficulties in social interaction and other matters, but we are good at our special interest. And for the matter of fact, for the past years, of course, I have a routine on a daily basis. What I do, I engage in geopolitical studies and analysis, and I gotta say that I take a lot of pride in my geopolitical theorizing and analysis, which is rather original. Sometimes there's outbursts of academic, intellectual, to overly philosophical discussions when it comes to the world of geopolitics. However, being an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and strategist, because of course I am, my strategies and the initiatives that I'm proposing and have been proposing, especially during COVID, have been, of course, proponent for the North American Collective and global civilization as a whole. But I am nonetheless a North American, a Quebecer, Canadian. North American is Canada Day coming up, and of course you got that Canada flag, you got the United States flag here, and you got the Quebec flag, and yours truly right here, Canadian, got that Canada tatted up right there. But don't ask me when and how I got this tattooed and how much it cost, because I don't know. So it's a special dinner event right here, special dinner. Gonna be grateful, thankful for this food, and we're gonna sip a little bit of that food and some of that drink. And thank you to my anonymous friend who gifted a little bit of that cola, and for the buns of the burger buns. So I'm gonna be enjoying a little bit of a meal while we go. We're gonna have a dinner and discuss geopolitics. We're just gonna focus on geopolitics, maybe a little bit of rock and roll, because that's what I do: rock and roll, geopolitics, and sports and fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport. Yours truly. Tomorrow, big cleaning, last day of June, last day of June. Tomorrow, big cleaning, and encourage you all to work out, train, exercise. And on the video here, on the other side, I'm gonna be watching a little bit of that hardball ball. One of my favorite Super Bowls is the hardball ball, and much of my strategy is, of course, and initiatives is for defense. Of course, for the North American Collective, for the 10 provinces, 50 states, 10 provinces, 50 states, and of course 3 territories, which constitute the Imperial 63, Collective 63, for the 63 24/7, what I call for the implementation of my Trinity activities in order to best fuse the Canada and Canada United States, of course, in the 21st century geopolitical strategy. My way to fuse Canada best. And of course, Granddaddy Trump did the mistake to invite us to join the perpetual union, of course, by imposing tariffs. And of course, we have certain vulnerabilities. We have to be, this is real geopolitics, although of course I'm part of a dreamer and an idealist. But when it comes to geopolitics, we have to take the right, the left, and the center, because I'm a democratic Republican, and you got to leave the baggage at the door, meaning that I'm part of the LGBTQ community. And of course, I got the flag right there, flying it for years and years. I'm androgynous, pansexual. You get that 50-50, many past lives, many incarnations. You know that I believe in reincarnations, and sometimes I was born in the United States 3 times post 1776, once as a woman, twice as a man, served in the United States Army, 2 different wars, 156 years apart. So now I'm just going to raise a little bit of the cup. It has a little bit of alcohol. I do not, of course, drink a lot of alcohol. I'm financially stressed, but once in a while, a little bit of that wine. I had leftovers from about a few weeks ago, and I'm just going to not tardy and press play for the hardball ball to play on the TV there, because I'm going to glance a little bit of that strategy, and we're going to stretch while we commence and while we go a little bit on geopolitics for the North American Collective. First and foremost, for the North American Collective, what I call, as a philosopher, the North American civilizational complex, of which Quebec, Canada, North America, Canada, United States of America, the 50 states, Mexico, and even Cuba. Cuba is a paradoxical, because they refused, they're about to embark on joining BRICS, the BRICS organization, and of course they're Marxist, socialist, and they have a one-party state. But Haiti, Dominican Republic, and other countries are part of the North American Collective. So some even strategists and geopolitical theoretical analysts and historians and political scientists go furthermore down south, including Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Costa Rica, and of course El Salvador, to include it all the way to the corner of Bolivia and Venezuela. But I'm able to make that compromise to say that yes, North America can go deeper south than Mexico. So cheers to my brothers and sisters. Pledge your allegiance, friend with the benefits only. And this is a little bit of sangria, has a little bit of alcohol, wine. I don't drink a lot, but I'm gonna toast to the pacification, to the cold wall. I'm inviting all to the Mount Royal Belvedere my second home there, my mistress, the forest on the mountain, my doctor, Monroe, where I've been going for years and doing a lot of environmental cleaning. So yours truly encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. Gonna be watching the Harbor Ball, aka Blackout Ball, the kickoff. It was a few years ago. One of my top 5 Super Bowls is known as the Blackout Ball, aka Harbor Ball, aka Bro Ball. So we're gonna have some defensive strategies, because my strategies are first and foremost for the security, liberty, and defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, for the North American civilizational plateau or the North American civilizational collective. So some jargon you might not be familiar with is original, because my original theoretical analysis and strategies are for the North American collective. So if you will to commission, I'm just financially stressed. I'm broke. I admit it. I'm got trillions of kisses, though. Trillions of kisses created from the forgotten goddess, one of the temples that I will to build. I'm going to mention what I will to build. Construction workers, let it be known that I will to build the 4. The North American People's Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. My call, if you don't know that, you will know that since 2018, when Donald Trump, Granddaddy Trump, imposed tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel over 10% back then in 2018, and of course March, spring. That was a geopolitical mistake, and of course since then I have been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match, and I'm grateful, thankful that I got the red gloves. I've been showing them off once in a while, and my anonymous friend, who wasn't my friend because of the money, gifted me those red gloves, by which I'm going to continue in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. I guess as I'm calling for the September 11th North American Collective Summit on Mount Royal, of course, to implement my holy trinity of theories, the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Lateral Fusion Theory, and the DFT, the Democratic Fusion Theory, to be implemented via the 4th dimension. Take some of that love, and as much as I understand the policies and the programs known, of course, as the philosophy or ideological philosophy known as peace through strength, I understand it. At some point I do support it, but I cannot support it fully, because strength is not enough. It is counterbalanced, but it has to be counterbalanced by love and understanding. And I know somebody this Sunday, it is of course 29th of June, is making some love. Some lovers make double love. Hug like you never hugged before is the main message today. Like a 4-quarter of footballs is 15 minutes. Take a hug for 15 minutes with consent across the 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories. Hug for me too, 15 minutes, then another 15 minutes, then another 15 minutes, then another 15 minutes. Pledge your allegiance, financially stressed but broke, and I watch a little bit of this football on the side while doing a little bit of stretching and gonna cheer on. So I will to build the 4. Together with my brothers and sisters and construction workers, when they go on those cranes with those steels, that metal, that bricks, of course we got to salute our construction workers, firefighters, plumbers, bakers, nurses, electricians, plumbers, or IT workers across the North American collective. Of course, got to shout out the truckers now on the road with that bread, the cheese, the bacon, of course the rice, and of course I'm eating some rice, and I have some donations. Somebody made a donation, my first pairs of the season. It's summer now, 29th of June 2025, so these I'm going to eat as dessert, and I'm going to be grateful for the meal which we're going to enjoy together while we discuss. So what I will to build is the 4. The North American People's Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. That's what I will to build, the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Prior to that name, of course, it was used to be known as the Mercedes Super-Benz, and before that it was also used to be known as the Louisiana Superdome. Is exactly where the Super Bowl that I'm watching now on the TV screen, of course, known as the Harbor Ball, aka Blackout Ball, one of my top 5s, even though my 49ers lost by 3 points, not a lot. Is a very defensive strategic game, and of course much of my geopolitical strategy can be concorded to dancing, which is my favorite sport, dancing. And of course dancing is my favorite sport and fitness activity, and marching, and gridiron. I love North American football, love that gridiron. Also more gridiron, North American football, I do love it a lot, because I love to watch it. And I'm a 49er for years and years and years, and of course prior also to football, American football is what I like, of course, is geopolitical strategy and geopolitical theories and geopolitical analysis. That's my special interest. And back to what I said before, that my will with the will of others in concordance, pledge your allegiance is to build the 4. I want to build 4 across the North American, 4 buildings, that is. One to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, to be the biggest, most extensive arena ever built for sports in perpetuities. And once me and Donald Trump, we're going to have the inauguration event, because have been him and will challenge Donald Trump since 2018, because Granddaddy Trump with Canadians is no way to invite us by tariffs. There's no way to invite us by tariffs to join the perpetual union. And my way to fuse Canada and the United States best for the 21st century strategy, which I'm going to initiate and I'm going to discuss. It's called the bipolar imperial strategy for the total dominion of the 21st century geopolitical world, or the strategy for the 21st century, the bipolar strategy for the geopolitical dominion of the 21st century by the fusion of Canada and the United States. So it could be formulated several ways, a little bit of a more academic, intellectual title. Bipolar, not to be confused with bipolarity as in the philosophical, psychiatric condition or the psychological condition known as bipolarity, not in that sense, in a strictly a mere geopolitical sense. So today's we're going to focus on geopolitics because that's what I am, an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and strategist, although I'm also an artist and independent athlete who loves to dance. And yours truly, the bipolar strategy for the North American collective civilization's dominion of the 21st century geopolitics by the fusion of Canada thereof, is going to be presented after I discuss the 4 buildings which I will to build before I forget. So the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, where me and Donald Trump were going to inaugurate, and we're going to build it on the Canadian-US border, Canada-United States joint, symbolizing our perpetual union, which is going to come in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. And of course, based on my new 911 Dragon total security, total service, total defense protocols, which are philosophical discourses and social, political, cultural, philosophical, political, geopolitical discourses for the strategy of the 21st century, implementing several of my theories, such as, of course, the total mobile defense theory, which I cannot overly discuss because it's matters of binational security. Of course, it revolves around security strategies, and of course, that discussion has to be only made with, of course, the national security services, and of course, the security services of Canada and United States jointly, and of course, the David McGuinty, the new Minister of National Defense, parallel, of course, to the Minister of National Defense, to be as well in concordium with, of course, Pete Hegseth, the Minister of National Defense of the United States, and, of course, the Minister of Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, the Minister of Defense, the Chief of CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Establishment, which I believe either they celebrated 40 years or 44 years. I think 1980, June 21st, 1980 or 1984, either of those years, but June 21st was the foundation of Canadian Security Intelligence Establishment, CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the Canadian Security Intelligence Services, the CSIS, and which I've did in the past years, a little bit of a cooperation on the matters of national security, a priority back in 8 or 9 years ago. And I think it's been this July 1st, either going to be 9 years or 10 years since I am living in this underground room of Sun Temple where I survived having coronavirus. On the subject of the coronavirus, please, I encourage you all to keep those hygiene protocols, disinfect the hands. There's microbes, bacteria, and germs when you go around, and I try to keep it in my best possible manner to keep the protocols of the hygiene, of course, in public, which were implemented during the coronavirus period. So I encourage you all to please disinfect your hands. You touch the screens at the ATM machine, whatever you do when you open the lids, or you check, inspect, of course, goods on the supermarket, on the shelves of the supermarket. Keep in mind that in the public and the private, because if I step out of this private headquarters, I have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, of course, which I do not have under the normal formality of the existence of my daily life activities, which are in the private or in the public, although I choose now to share with the public some of my initiatives and ideas, of course, semi-intellectual, semi-academic, partly sophisticated in a more scholarly manner, but philosophical nonetheless in terms of geopolitics. So let's build the fort together, the North American People's Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, to have sports, all 24/7 sports activities where the public workers, those who build the aqueducts and the sewers, and those who build the bridges and the roads, public workers of the past and present and future, are going to be able to come work out with the athletes of the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. Let's go, owners, don't be so selfish. It takes a public-private partnership. My dream is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership across the North American collective, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, and I will to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess. I did say Goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S. I did say Goddess. I have the Priestess of the Goddess, which I serve sometimes. Priestess of that Telemites, 418. Keep my name out of your mouth, Adrian Hana Dragon. New name rebirthing, if not for a blessing. Keep my name out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing. Thank you for understanding. And let's build the Forgotten Goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S Temple, because in the Empire, the fusion of the Canada, United States in the 63, the 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories together, the 63 new states of the Empire will be. God bless the new union, perpetual union of the new United States, the Imperial Union. It's going to be God bless and Goddess kiss. God bless and Goddess kiss. God bless and Goddess kiss. God bless Canada, United States fusion. Goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S kiss. It's got to go to the tango. God bless, G-O-D, God bless, but also Goddess as a mystic, universal spiritual teaching student who's a student, not a connoisseur, not a total 100% prophet. I'm not a prophet. I'm not anything like that, but I do goddess at GODDSS it, and that's it, how to rock and roll. And I will to build the pyramid, scarlet, crimson. Crimson and scarlet are shades that are red, 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 red. This is scarlet, basically red. RED, and of course the House of the Dragon. And I became a dragon right here in this Hakata Montreal underground room of some temple by blood, sweat, and tears, and thousands of marching steps. During COVID, the past 5 years, I marched more than all the generals of NATO combined during this COVID. You can see hundreds of my workout videos, and of course, did hundreds of thousands of push-ups and blood, sweat, and tears to turn that A into a no. Nobody is born a dragon is the motto of the Dragon Army, which is the and of course, I will to build the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow LGBTQ community and neurodivergent community. And that was the introduction. Let's build the four, and fuse my way Canada, United States, and create this two new complementary covenant and cooperative institution, the Dragon Army, aka the North American Imperial SSD Legion, the Dragon Army, based on my new 911 total security, total service, total defense protocols to fuse security apparatus of Canada, United States, and to transmode it and implement it further for service, and security and service, and defense for service and security and defense, the Trinity, only to serve for SSD, security, service, and defense, and of course, fourth dimension to ensure freedom here. And my brothers and sisters, as I sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue, I also got to sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls who take their second chance and do their criminal rehabilitation. One of the songs that I written during COVID, because I died right here. COVID for me here. Right here I had COVID, coronavirus hit me hard, and it was like death, pestilence, and disease. Like death, pestilence, and disease. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. I know, like, it sounds like a hardcore death thrash metal rock and roll song. Death, pestilence, and disease on my enemies, please, But that's how I felt, and I thought I was gonna die right here, February 2020, mid-February 2020 to about March 2020. I said, this is it for me. I'm dying here in this room of Sun Temple, and I guess I died in many ways, being reborn, nothing that I will to go back to. Today, 29th of June, living for today and for tomorrow, to have hope and give some charity. I'm financially stressed. Just my only stress now is financial. Besides financial stress, I'm pretty joyous. And in the past years, I got to salute my anonymous friend for a great book which made me understand my difference and my own vulnerabilities, because I'm part of a community called Aspie. So I have Asperger's, so I'm not too good with the social interactions, and we have certain weird characteristics. And again, Asperger's is not a mental illness. It is a neurological mental divergent condition, and there are certain brain mutations, but we have our strengths, certainly when it comes to the world of geopolitics. My independent geopolitical theorizing and analysis and strategies for the North American Collective are, of course, proponent and great and super and excellent, I gotta say, of course. And I gotta say that I take great pride in my geopolitical analysis and theorizing and strategies as well. And I have predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I have the proof of work because I have the video online on YouTube. So I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration coming in the future. So starting from October, November 2019, just before COVID, I predicted that humanity is again set to go on the course towards an international conflagration, aka World War III, based on several premises. One of my major premises, I'm not going to go into the overly intellectual academic of my work back in 2019, but it's very relevant to today's geopolitical situations and the degradation and of course the end of the unipolar world. So we're going to build together the bipolar New World Order, together. Here, Canadians and United States, we're going to fuse together and we're going to create two complementary institutions, public-private partnership institution, and we're going to create a bipolar New World Order. So this bipolar New World Order is going to be the fusion of Canada in a security, service, and defense complex. A security, service, and defense complex in a security, service, and defense complex. Don't want to get too intellectual, academic, and verbose about it, but definitely to sustain what security means, to secure the individual sovereignty and liberty in parallel with the collective, right? Because we have an individual responsibility, and of course, I am a mess. I'm a mess sometimes in certain things. I'm mediocre, and I'm part of this tiny fraction of the population who have Asperger's, meaning I'm an Aspie, and some people don't even know what it is. It's a lot of people actually have no idea what it is, and myself for years and years and years by several citizens and individuals I have been diagnosed with it, but I continuously refused it because it's like a stigma to have, a label to have on you, like a mark, and it's something that I have to live with, of course, and I will live with it because there's no medication for Asperger's. I have just to adjust and constantly build bridges of understanding and furtherance of the certain characteristics which I have as an Aspie, meaning our intensity, our super concentration, super dedication, and super focus when we are engaged and involved in those special interests, of which my holy trinity of special interest, also known as obsessive interest, is 24/7 in geopolitics, the study, the analysis of geopolitics, sports and fitness, dancing being my favorite sport, and the third one is rock and roll. Always rock and roll. For the bakers, for the butchers, for the truckers, those flipping some of those burgers, delivering that food. Ain't nobody, everybody gotta eat. It's not all about Wall Street. Shake that booty, booty, so I can kiss, and I can lick, play that black and white and rainbow. That's the dragon, how we go. On the road, you got those truckers and the train conductors, public workers in the changing those aqueducts, building some roads and blocks. You know, it takes that metal and that steel, some of that soft pillow. Yeah, rock and roll 24/7 for the 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories, for the 63, 63, 63, and all ALL, our allies, and all who come to join us here. So we're going to delve into geopolitics. Now I'm going to watch a little bit of that football, see how it's going, a little bit of left to right, and it takes, of course, the universal revolutionary centrist of mine. And now I'm going to get back to doing a little bit of taste of this food because it's a series which I'm launching, of course, the bipolar geopolitical initiatives and strategy for the 21st century, the geopolitical dominion by the fusion of Canada and the United States. In my dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, the imperial fusion, of course, for the sovereignty, individual, and the rehabilitation of the North American criminal population. Based on my documents, most of my documents which I've written, of course, the initiatives and protocol date back to 2017, back when I crossed Canada coast to coast. That event made me come out of being depressed and suicidal. And one more thing that I'm going to add about we Aspies, also have to always constantly build bridges, which the majority of the population of 99.56%, the neurotypicals, and of course to build bridges of understanding. But the problem, the trinity of problems Aspies like myself face is very high unemployment. I had many jobs in the past 7 years, but maintaining them long term and in a long term manner has been more difficult in the past 7 years. And I had many jobs, especially during the coronavirus. But it's the misunderstanding, and a lot of people unfortunately still believe and think that Asperger's is like a contagious mental illness, which of course it's not a mental illness. It is not a contagion. It is just our brains are mutated, and so we see the world in a different manner, and we are different in certain propositions, or our interactions can seem very awkward and weird, and bodily movements, and we have these repetitive bodily movements or repetition of phrases, or a characteristic called echolalia, which is repeating the same sentence verbatim per verbatim. That verbatim per verbatim, that's Latin for word that somebody might utter and say. So that is something which of course we got to take in consequence of being neurodivergent, and I have learned it the hard way. I've suffered, struggled, and having friends, maintaining friends, and friends with benefits only from now on. Thanks for understanding. Friends with benefits from now on. Friends with benefits from now on. Friends with benefits from now on. Tomorrow is gonna big cleaning for me here in 2 days is June 1st. Correction. It's the end of June. Tomorrow is the last day of June, 30th of June, and of course Tuesday is Canada Day and Friday is July 4th. So I celebrate both because I'm a Quebecer Canadian and I was born in the United States 3 times post 7076. You just gotta read that. George Patton, he also believed in reincarnations. One of my favorite generals, George Patton. One of my favorite poems is of course Through a Glass Darkly, THOROUGHAGLASS, Through a Glass, DARKLY, Through a Glass Darkly, which is of course one of my favorite poems, which believed in reincarnations, as I do, firm believer in reincarnations. But I was sometimes born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man. So today you get that 50-50, half, but now is an Aspie geopolitics. So yours truly. I'm gonna give some rock and roll for my fellow neurodivergents. Love you, fellow Aspies. And thank you to my fellow Aspie who about September last year, 2024, sent $25.44. And I got some bacon, some food, and I guess I got for $8.90, I think the cheapest, most affordable wine bottle on the market, and I share it with my anonymous friend. And this has some alcohol, but it's like a sangria. So, but I drink it slow because I'm not too resistant to alcohol. I feel it right away. For world peace, welcome to the dinner. Welcome to geopolitics. Welcome to the strategy. Leave the baggage at the door, please. Let's build a 4 pledge of allegiance to our family. And before I go into the strategy, because I'm launching it, because that was a bit of an introduction, 3 main problems Aspies have. Unemployment is very high in the Aspie communities. 80% is unacceptable, and we are a tiny small fraction of the population. Less than 1%, 0.44%. So it's totally unacceptable for Aspies to live in such a manner, and of course to have this problem, which is of course very problematic. 80% compared to, it's 11 times higher than the normal population. 80 times higher. 80%, it's 11 times higher than the normal. So for one neurotypical who's unemployed, you have 11 Aspies. 80%, 80. That's 4/5. If you want to do fraction-wise, 4/5, 0.8 in decimal terms. Mathematically, it's unacceptable. And also the big problem is also 9 times higher the depression and suicidal rate. And I was depressed, and I was suicidal. What made me come out of being depressed and suicidal was crossing Canada coast to coast. When I crossed Canada coast to coast, in 2017, I still have those tickets. I'm auctioning each ticket because I went from Vancouver first in 2017 August. Then, of course, in September, I went, of course, in Nova Scotia. And that made me come out of being depressed and suicidal and established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, Quebecers, Canadians, and I consider you our family, Quebecers, Canadians, North Americans, our family, and just learn some French. And we made the great North American linguistic compromise of the French language, and we got to continue to do so in the future as we got to do today. So rock and roll and pledge your allegiance, and I've written the protocols initiatives for the mass financing via public-private partnership for general North American collective wellness and integration of the population to establish a strong esprit de corps and a solidarity sentiment to mass finance tourism from the 50 states to come here. That's the way to invite us. Donald Trump say, I'm going to give you some tickets, come visit the 50 states. 50 states come here, vice versa, cut together in the bipolar New World Order. Not bipolar again, to be confused with the mental psychiatric, if you want to call it a disorder, a malaise, a disorder, whatever you want to call it. Not in that sense. In a strictly mere geopolitical sense, and I'm going to bless this food. Thank you. I cooked for myself and for my friends, but my friend provided the meat, so provided some of that meat. So take a bite before we go into the bipolar. The initiative of strategy for the bipolar New World Order to dominate the 21st century geopolitics by the fusion of Canada and the United States. That could be the title of it. It's a title which has several titles, or working on the title, I guess, but that's based on several of my theories, of course, which I discussed in the past videos and protocols and initiatives. Thank you, farmers, cooks, all the farmers of the 63, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Those flipping some burgers now. Sunday cooking some of that cheeseburgers, some of those meats, making those deliveries by whatever application you might have. And we need to open up in the public-private partnership for total food security for all. Total food security across the 63, and of course to initiate for food security, to have volunteering for, of course we have to start building the 44. We got to start constructing the 44. We have to start constructing and building the 44. The 44 I'm making a reference to building the 44 tunnels. I've written an initiative, of course, part of my several initiatives. One of the initiatives is the initiative to build and construct 44 tunnels across the North American Collective, and that's why we have to implement my protocol called the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act to rehabilitate the criminal population. And in order to give them some amnesties, we should give an amnesty to the undocumented migrants, undocumented citizens, undocumented workers. And we have to do a great census, Canada, United States joint great census, and implement my DRT theory. Via my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, we're going to be able to move the complex for the new bipolar new order in a democratic, republican, imperial manner to make assessments. And of course we have to assess who's a threat to society, a threat, of course, if you have 44 convictions in the past 3.5 years, that could be problematic. I'm just going to get a tissue. So that could be a bit problematic. Of course, we have to assess and discern. Discernment is key, of course, in all the general manners, of course, which I'm explaining, the protocols and the initiatives, which got to be, of course, individually also assessed and implemented in a concordian manner, which will concord to the different parts and aspects of our 63 to 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories, which we're going to fuse in a public-private partnership, democratic manner way into perpetual union. And by also, we have to create these two complementary, covenant and cooperative, and complementary institutions for the 21st century for service, security, and defense and environment. The Dragon Army has to be counterbalanced by the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the North American Integrated Dance League. To dance, I can dance for hours. Yours truly, the Rainbow Dragon Priestess, HNH, for of course the Dancing Goddess Army for the environmental education and environmental action, because it takes environmental action by the individual. I walk sometimes here in the metropolis, Hawk Island, Montreal, and I check the garbages, and you see on my videos, I do it myself. I put it in the recycling, because in a lot of the garbages, there's things which should actually be in the recycling, such as cans and plastics and paper, and still I can improve myself. I don't make pretense that I don't make mistakes. I make plenty mistakes, especially since I lack and I'm vulnerable in certain situations of the social nature and understanding certain more social dynamics. I have difficulties with that. I do have difficulties. I gotta thank my anonymous friend, because one book which made me learn more about myself and see from this neurotypical perspective how my difference, having Asperger's, can be of course open to exploitation for vulnerabilities, exploitation and abuse and all the etc, which can come with being an Aspie, but I don't like violence myself. I don't like violence. And aggression has to be channeled in sports and fitness, but I can be intense, super concentrated, and super intense, super focused, super concentrated, but I am hyper vigilant, and I have to go retrieve some of the documents at the Jewish General Hospital, because I was attacked by surprise, and the Montreal Metro fell, hit my head on the concrete, and had a dislocated right shoulder. Right arm was cracked back a few years ago, maybe 10-11 years ago. I'm not sure exactly. Gotta have to retrieve the documents. 11 years ago, maybe years, 2014, something like that. I don't know exactly when, but I was bloodied up. I was bloodied up, but I survived, I guess. Because they tried to take me out. I guess Granddaddy Trump and me have something in common. Somebody tried to take us out, both of us. And no MAGA, I'm now Trump supporter. My vision, the fusion of Canada and United States via my Trinity of theories, and especially the DRT, that will make us the greatest geopolitical entity, the greatest marriage the world has ever seen. I still gotta propose, and I'm gonna propose again to somebody, but I proposed already twice, but nobody's gonna want to marry me. I'm androgynous pansexual, so it's gonna have to be a special marriage. But I think I'm gonna have to go to the mountain and start carving for diamonds. The diamond. Financially stressed, but hey, whatever the case may be, here we are, and I'm pretty joyous. If I always gotta say something, I wanna be buried according to the law of Telema, buried with the book of the law. A third of me Papa Crowley up in Hampton, New Jersey. 1/3 of me sent in ancient Egypt by the Trinity of Pyramids, where I was incarnated, born in several past lives. My other house here, the pyramids. And 1/3 of the mountain, Mount Royal here, my home in this life and in another life, the island where I was born a woman. Sometimes I was born a Quebecois, but Quebecois not as we have them today, but in the 1700s, between 1688 and I lived between 1688 and 1733. Yeah, I was a woman, but when it was Nouvelle France and before Quebec, as we have Quebec, Canada of today, because after Confederation, and before even, of course, the United States was independent in 1776 with Washington going, of course, and fighting the American Revolutionary War. The king is absent, brothers and sisters. Fellow Canadians. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. It's time for the implementation of my Trinity of theories. It's time for the new North American Union Democratic Republican Party, or the North American Collective Workers Party, aka the Phoenix People's Party, for the North American Collective, the bipolar. the bipolar, not in the psychological, psychiatric sense, but the bipolar strategy for the 21st century dominion of geopolitics via the fusion of Canada and the United States via the DRT theory and the CIT theory and the DFT theory, which I'm now going to discuss. So leave the baggage at the door. Gonna glance. Baltimore 7, San Francisco 3, in Harbor Ball, Blackout Ball. To the butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, those on the road now, truckers, stay safe on the road. To the brothers and sisters in uniform, to the boys and girls in blue, nobody's perfect. We got to fight we're individuals, part of the institutions. We need to create these two new institutions. If I am to fight racism in some way, I always open for some hugs. Money I don't have, but I wouldn't be hesitant to donate to my fellow neurodivergent community, LGBTQ community, or my brothers and sisters who are black. If you want to come loving with me, or black, white, man and woman, not a problem. You can see me often on the mountain, and you got to be 18 though. I'm going to card you. You're going to have to be, of course, don't jump on me right away, because I am hyper vigilant. So first we're going to have some dialogue, but I am hyper vigilant like that. But I'm not really looking for romantic involvement or more sentimental affairs, but friends with benefits, of course. And my dream to build the forgotten goddess GeoDDSS temple, and I got those trillions of kisses I got by the trillions to lay the foundations of the first empire kingdom, of course. The Democratic Republic was ever first founded by kisses. It's kisses, KISSS, because it's God bless Canada, United States, but also goddess kiss in the kingdom, in the empire, to the forgotten goddess. And we gotta have some justice, of course. Losing one's freedom and liberty is so precious, so precious. That's why I'm looking forward. I have great hope that we're gonna implement the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act. And of course, as we go towards the liberation, we have to secure and move towards a security, service, and defense complex, to move towards a security, service, and defense complex. And of course, the Dragon Army, that's what's gonna be its main function, and only for SSD. So welcome to the geopolitical strategy. The geopolitical strategy, the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the North American collective dominion of the 21st century politics. So it's not bipolar in the psychiatric, psychological sense. It's bipolar as in Canada, United States fusing, merging via my Trinity theory. So just to clarify, the academic, intellectual, cosmopolitan title of the lecture can be stated to be as the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the 21st century world dominion, in a peaceful way, in a benevolent and just way, of course, by the fusion of Canada and United States into the complex. So the greatest marriage the world has ever seen is going to be, geopolitically speaking. And it is our common destiny, because we're North Americans, and we're going to fuse the North through North Strong and Free with the South. So you can see here the Canadian flag, the American flag, the Quebec flag in the back, and the Canadian flag. And of course, I always have the flag on me, I got Canada tatted up, so I don't need to bring it at the July 1st in 2 days. Today's Sunday. Sabbath is about, and Sabbath to the dancing goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, of course, but in the geopolitical context. So forget about psychology, forget about other things. Geopolitics. What is happening to the world today? Today the world is heading towards, if this has started actually a few years ago, the international conflagration, which I've foreseen, not as a prophet, but as somebody who has Asperger's and whose special interest is geopolitics. So I am involved on a daily basis with concentration, super focus, super intensity in geopolitical analysis. Left, right, and center, Quebec, from the Quebec perspective, Montreal perspective, Canadian perspective, North American perspective, including Mexico, NATO perspective, NATO perspective, and of course from the perspective of a world citizen, as much as I try to be and fundamentally understand. And please, if you do want to have a discussion on China, on just China in the world today, is it a superpower, is it not? If you want to have that discussion, about how the relations with China have to move forward, you have to know a little bit about the governance of China. The governance of China is a volume which is, of course, starting about 2012 when Xi Jinping, the current leader, paramount leader of China, took power of the Communist Party of China. Not to be confused with the ROC, because the ROC, Republic of China, is Taiwan. Taiwan is known as the ROC. So if you want to have a discussion of modern China, the People's Republic of China, you have to know a little bit about the governance of China. If not, I will have to send you to read about it, and know a little bit about it. If you want to engage in a political discussion about China, you have to have some knowledge, because that's where the fundamental premises, ideologies, programs, protocols, and philosophies of modern-day China, 21st century China, are outlined. And of course, taking into consideration the fact that the People's Republic of China was founded in October 1949 by Mao Zedong. Nonetheless, their historical development of how they became to be the 21st century power post-Soviet Union era, and their solidification in the past years since 2020 until present day with the Russia-Chinese solidification of power, which is a bipolar alliance in the East. Furthermore, this is juice, by the way. Furthermore, it's not just an alliance that's bipolar, but it's a multipolar alliance because they're part of BRICS. And BRICS has just added new members and potential new members on the horizon, including Cuba, paradoxically. So basically, the theories and propositions and protocols to initiate the fusion, the marriage of Canada and the United States in the 21st century, and my brothers and sisters, fellow Canadians, the king is absent. The king is absent, king is absent, king is absent. And I'll always with the Dragon Army to defend you here coast to coast, ocean to ocean, because I consider you my family. But the king is absent nonetheless, and we got to formulate this strategy, which comprises a geopolitical strategy. It's fundamentally a geopolitical strategy which has to be put on the table, and we have to do it. We have to do it. Because the world is heading towards what I predicted back in 2019, which I'm going to go now into because it's part of my work. In 2019, October, November, I predicted that humanity is set again to go towards the concordium of an international conflagration. Due to several deep layers of geopolitical, scholarly, academic, intellectual, philosophical work. But to summarize it, just because if I start beginning discussing my theories and analysis of 2019, October, November 2019, I'm not going to stop, and I'm just going to keep on going on that. And it's not the class, lecture, discourse, freestyle of today. But due to the fact that many conflicts, unresolved conflicts from the 20th century were not fully resolved, that's why consequently I appellated and I concluded that humanity is set to go again towards an international conflagration due to these unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, which of course fundamentally lie between during the Cold War period, which lasted almost 45 years, between March 1947 and December 1991, which is about 44 years and 9 months. So between 44 years and 9 months, that's what they lasted, almost 45 years. The Cold War was a long period of time. So, fundamentally, that was, of course, the premise. The situational premise, or of course the common denominator, was that there were unresolved conflicts dating from the 20th century, which were not fully resolved. And due to that fact of these unresolved conflicts from the 21st century, that the conflicts are going to reignite. The reignition of these 21st century conflicts, I foresaw it as coming on the horizon. And if you look at the Russia-Ukraine situation, it's pretty much an unresolved 20th century Cold War period conflict, which has restarted. The Middle East also, Israel, Hamas. Hamas was an institution founded in the 1980s. In the 1980s during the Cold War. And of course, Iran was founded in February 11th, 1979. Officially, they took power February 11th, 1979. 11th of February, 1979, Iran. And they had a current conflict ever since with Israel. And of course, potentially another conflict, China and Taiwan. Taiwan and China have an unresolved conflict from the 20th century, and another one from the partition of the British India is Pakistan and India, which just a few weeks ago in Kashmir they had a some exchanges of fire and some conflict, some outright conflict, which was feared in the world to be escalatory in a nuclear conflict. And of course, the nuclear question, of course, which we have to ask ourselves, and is how come we see this big, massive rearmament? Of course, we see in the past 5 years, since February 2020, we see China has increased by a big proportion its nuclear arsenal. They have mass invested in the nuclear development, which they have not done so since the late 70s, in more than 44 years. And now in 5 years, they invested massively. Massively. So part of the newly dedicated 5% of the NATO commitment to increase in defense and defensive and infrastructure structure has to be applied for implementing my total mobile defense theory via Operation Northern Scorpio, and to create the Dragon Army, aka the North American Imperial SSD Legion, SSD Security Service and Defense Legion, to be integrated with all existing public and private security institutions across the 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories, security coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and mass mobilization for the population in order to rebuild the infrastructure of the North American Collective, which we have to be doing because our bridges, our infrastructure, our aqueducts. Gotta salute those workers of the 20th century who built all the infrastructure for me and you and us to have potable water. And gotta give a shout out to Hydro-Quebec workers of the past 20th century. Here in Quebec, we have built 63 dams. Look at by Providential, I think we have 63, parallel to the 63, the 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories, which are gonna fuse together. And here we made the great linguistic compromise of the French language to have continuity of peace and harmony with us 10 million Quebecers. And we're going to build more hydroelectric dams because it's clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy. And we got to be grateful because I got this energy, which I'm now doing this video by live streaming, and of course this energy to cook and the energy, of course, to watch the television comes from the Hydro-Quebec. So thank you. And I'm gonna sing some rock and roll. Ready to wash some feet, not a problem. Rock and roll, wash some feet, get some massages, because I know the blah 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 is theoretical blah blah blah. It takes a little bit of brains, and it takes a little bit of muscle, and it takes a little bit of doing. And I'm also a philosopher and intellectual philosopher and geopolitical theoretical analyst and strategist who's also a doer. I like to do things. I like to stay physically active. I lost between 80 pounds and 93 pounds. And before I was depressed and suicidal, I was like 290 pounds. I lost right here in this room of Sun Temple. I died and I'm being reborn. Nobody's born a dragon, not even myself with a surname named Dragon. If I gotta get those dragon fire drills, bet I will constitute double trouble. George Patton, gonna call George Patton's ghost, and we're gonna go together with George Patton on the right side, and of course we're gonna go with the others on the left side, and right in the middle roundabout, General Rainbow Dragon, aka General Cuckold. So the formulation of the bipolar New World Order for the bipolar geopolitical dominance by the fusion of Canada and the United States is a geopolitical strategy. Bipolarity, again, bipolar as in fusion of Canada, United States, the North and the South. Our resources, and let's face it, you need us, we need you, we need each other. We need each other. Your massive population, of course, if there would be an invasion, I would hear in the news, breaking news, who's going to be running towards the border to defend my brothers and sisters in the USA? Rainbow Dragon. Provided that happens, of course I would be running to defend my brothers and sisters in the USA, because we're speaking that good English, rock and roll. We're speaking that good English. And now, of course, in my room house and temple, it's French, English, Spanish. I love speaking Spanish, so I hated that trilingual, not a problem for me. But it's, of course, English, French, English. And I'm gonna get that rock and roll, but of course, kind of one condition: if you get invaded, I'm gonna come defend coast to coast, ocean to ocean, from the east to the west, and the 50 states, Montreal to San Francisco, New York to San Francisco. But of course, I want one condition: Pam Bondi is gonna make love to her husband, and all husbands are gonna make a lot of loving, a lot of loving, a lot of loving. Even Granddaddy Trump to Melania, I gotta get some loving. Then I'll come defend you. If nobody's making love in the United States, in the 50 states, black, white, or brown, then I'm gonna stay here in Montreal on the mountain, because it's not all about the money. It's not all about the money. Hopefully, somebody hugging, making love. Wall Street, you got their pay. You got your pay. You're good. Billionaires, you're okay. I don't pretend. I don't pretend to be totally selfless. I love my wafers. I love wafers. I would really love to afford a good massage therapy. Any volunteers? Well, if you're gonna get that Dragon Army, we're gonna have public massage days across the 63. Hey, it's 3 o'clock. Public massage days. You got your hygiene? Yeah. Got the hygiene, got the lotion. Are you free? Yeah. Massage. Across the 63, we're gonna have security, service, and defense. Rebuild the infrastructure, rebuild the roads, and we're gonna rebuild the North American ghettos. We're gonna rebuild the ghettos. Gonna sign that executive order to rebuild the ghettos of North America, the inner urban cities, mass investment in the inner urban cities across the North American collective, across the North American collective, across the 63, wherever they find the North American ghettos across the 63, we're going to be rebuilding, and we're going to make a concordium, a new pact, a new alliance, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Of course, my brothers and sisters, or black, white, brown, whatever, across the 63, 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories, and of course my neighbors are black. I've been living here for this July 1st. It is going to be 9 years, or 10 even, maybe 10. I'm not sure when I moved here. I have a little blackouts of memory. I have trouble accessing and my memory prior to like 2015, 2014. I moved from a small prison type of cell. I really lived in a basement. There was lots of mold in a tiny, small, moldy type of prison type of cell, and I moved here. I was depressed, suicidal. I came out of being depressed, and here I am, on the joyous side. And I always love when I work out, training, exercise, I see people hugging, kissing, and give some charity, millionaires, billionaires, support the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, the bipolar new world order, Canada, United States fusing for the total dominance of the 21st century geopolitics. Bill the 4. Number 7, here's Kaepernick. Kaepernick was playing, and now is the second, and it's 14-3 now on the clock. Second period with 337, and that's how we gotta get doing with that 337. And of course, it's got 14-3. Baltimore leading by 14 minus 3 is 11 points. Who's now is, I think, Flacco versus Kaepernick. Yeah, number 5 was Flacco. So I'm watching the Harbaugh Bowl there once in a while. I glance to theorize, because many of my strategies are based on how the game was played. The strategies that this game was played was a strategy to it, but of course deep defensive strategies with partly offensive strategies. But we're gonna play that defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, via, of course, the foreign policies and formulation of other foreign policies. I guess we can leave to whatever, to Donald Trump and whatever. We're going to fuse together. We're going to be formulating new institutions, these two public-private partnership institutions, and of course to formulate an equilibrium in concordium, maybe by, of course, the population being involved directly in foreign policy matters. After we fuse, there's going to be an external type of different policies and dimensions, which is going to change. So I'm just going to comment a bit on the 5% NATO alliance. We're part of NATO, right? 32 countries. Well, that, of course, agreed to up the defensive spending on defense and defense-related infrastructure to 5% from the current level of 2% in the coming years. My understanding, I think it was in the coming 2029. I got to revise. Maybe I'm wrong. Double check. But 2029 is in 4 years, right? So 2029. I think that's something, or something like that in the coming years, whatever the case may be. So from 2% to 5% is a 3% increase. Now there's a variations, and of course there's several conditions and several layers of how that spending is meant to be happening, but general overall is to spend more on the military defense, right? The Canadian Armed Forces got to salute, and we're gonna create the Dragon Army only for defense, and NATO troops can come. And I created, before I proceed, I created a workout training program system to go with my hand-in-hand conclusion of 2019, when I concluded that there's going to be an international conflagration on the horizon. And you can see hundreds of my workout videos, and I have been, of course, advocating for my workout, which is an efficient, effective workout training program system which requires no equipment. I myself have performed more than 372 sessions right in this underground room of Sun Temple in the past, and I created it to go hand in hand with the World War III scenario back in 2019 in October, November. And of course I kept on, of course, working out and doing it in several different modes. But of course I have been advocating for the security forces apparatus to do it, and of course high schools and universities to do it, especially in high schools. I believe as young as 7 years old you can try to do it, because it takes about an average of about an hour to conclude it. So it's push-ups, hawks, and squats, and of course it's a general overall body. It's meant to increase general overall fitness, and it's meant for the need when we have a need for a population to be mobilized, and increase in fitness due to these external emergencies which we're now facing due to several layers of geopolitics. So now I gotta also mention that we have to take into consideration that Canada and the United States both, we face several vulnerabilities, because of course my main concern with certain things that have been happening, such as certain unrest, is that certain foreign powers, XYZ foreign powers, which have the financial, economic, and commercial means, that they're going to use and employ criminal underworld organizations in order to foment certain unrest and riots and what have you in the North American Collective across the 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories. So this is based, of course, on several propositions and, of course, some documents which I've written in the past, such as a document which relates to binational security, because most of my theories and protocols are binational. Canada, United States joint binational security matters. That's why in my videos of the past you see that my total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, and when we add the fifth letter to the acronym of total mobile defense theory, I do not overly discuss it because it's national security sensitive, and I cannot diverge that defense theory known as the total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, total mobile defense theory strategy. When we put an S, the total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, the 4-letter acronym, when we add the S to the 4 letters, the system, that means when it's becoming a system, the total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, becomes a system by putting the theory into practice, So the total mobile defense theory. So the implementation of the total mobile defense theory for the 63, integral with the creation of the Dragon Army and the implementation of the new 911 Dragon Total Security, Total Service, Total Defense protocols, is of course to infuse all the security apparatus, the police forces, the armed forces that exist, and of course to create this new security service institution, and institutions which exist, such as the RCMP here in Canada, and of course the FBI in the United States, and other institutions for domestic security, such as of course the National Guard, and other institutions such as Canadian Armed Forces, to create and infuse in this 21st century superseding institution, which colloquially called the Dragon Army, and of course its Pledge of Allegiance, and to be the North American Integrated SSD Legion for the 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories, as we're going to move towards creating a currency and getting rid of the border. We have to get rid of the border. We don't need the border. The border is really not necessary. We got to focus on the total mobile defense theory best at this point in time. The ports and the airports. The ports and the airports are points of entry in the North American Collective, as we're going to move towards the bipolar strategy to implement for the 21st century's dominion by fusing Canada and United States via the DRT theory and the CIT theory and the democratic fusion theory. Yeah. That's what we're gonna do. So the total mobile defense theory is something which, of course, we have to be implementing in a manner that it comes to the Concordia Mesa, because we are vulnerable now, even financially. So our vulnerabilities were, of course, also foreseen by yours truly in a 2017 document. Most of my work and theoretical, philosophical work and geopolitical work that I discuss about is, of course, post 2017, because before that I have some other work done, but I was depressed and suicidal a few years, but that got me out of being depressed. And the problem with Aspie is, of course, the high suicidal rates and depression rates and high unemployment, which is totally unacceptable, 80%. I was just watching a little bit of that football, so now I'm going to discuss that theoretical paper, which has a little bit of academic scholarly title. Was the Public-Private Partnership Citizen Initiative for the North American Reconciliation with Non-NATO Aligned Diaspora Community. So basically, it was several initiatives of a public-private partnership manner in order to have cordial relations with with communities who have joined us, Canada, United States, who come from non-NATO countries, and of course from non-NATO countries. NATO now is comprised of 32 states. So just to mention one more philosophy, or one of my, of course, summaries, or one of my analysis on the moving to 5% defense spending, the new Concordium, if they made a new, pardon? Oh, I can do it. Hey? I'm just gonna finish my work and yeah. After work. You're welcome. Yeah, after work. So I consider this as my work, my labors in philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, honest, and truth, and always open for communication and business and geopolitics, sports, fitness, dancing, friends with benefits only, pledge your allegiance, support the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom dream. Of course, the document, which of course was mentioned, of course, a priori, was the initiative, the Public-Private Partnership Initiative for the initiation of the peaceful reconciliation with non-NATO aligned diaspora members. And this was based on one of my theories, geopolitical theories of DIA, direct military action, which NATO took throughout the past after the fall of the Soviet Union, which, to be understood fully, after the fall of the Soviet Union. So after December 1991, after the end of the Cold War, in end of December 1991, right? What I call the direct military action by NATO, DMA, has created certain communities in the world from end of December 1991 till today, even, which NATO, because they took, as I didn't take the orders, I didn't make the decisions, of course, but the DMA, the direct military action, has made it that certain communities have fostered certain resentments, but those resentments are not necessarily going to take a direct, like sleeper cell type of action, direct action to harm us, but there's a potential there. So this is another document from 2017. So that's why this certain concrete action for the reconciliation with non-NATO diaspora members has to be fully implemented by our governmental security structure and apparatus. So not to be overly intellectual about it, but there's of course the dimension of the possibility of us being internally sabotaged by foreign actors, foreign countries, which, because we have taken DMA, direct military action, that of course that direct military action made us vulnerable in the Canadian Plateau for that different complexes or nation states, of course, has made us to be open to those specific vulnerabilities as a complex, as a North American civilizational complex, of course, as a Canadian Quebecer, due to, of course, those involvements, of which this theory is called the DMA theory, the direct military action, which was taken Concordium. I don't want to be too intellectual academic, because some of my geopolitical theorizing and intellectual geopolitics can be a bit overly scholarly, I guess, but just to say that DMA, the direct military action which NATO took in Concordium with several nation states and in certain nations and conflicts which are not part of NATO, the NATO alliance, of course. But that's what it is, and that's that direct military action, which of course has to be accorded the priority, which of course was the decision of certain individuals and citizens and generals of NATO and the powers that be post December 1991, so post the fall of the Soviet Union until today. So such interventions as, of course, for example, I can give several concrete interventions in Yugoslavia, and now it's no more longer Yugoslavia, but what used to be known as Yugoslavia, as Libya, several nation states, and of course that involvement to get DMA, direct military action, has potentially created a certain resentment within communities that come from countries which are non-NATO aligned, non-NATO, of which there are many, because NATO, the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization military alliance, comprises 32 states, 32 nation states, of which Canada, United States, and the mostly European. I guess Turkey is half in the Middle East, half in Europe, whatever. If you want to put it in the Concordium, I guess part of Turkey is European, part of Turkey is Middle Eastern. Turkey now. Turkey. So if you come on the video, just know that it's geopolitical related. I'm not gonna address other things, and no, you're not my cousin from somewhere else, and no, unless you pledge your allegiance here in North America, you come to North America, Montreal, whatever, this is my home, I left it. That's it. XYZ, that's it, what it is. And pledge your allegiance. If I know you, then that's it. If I don't, I don't. And if you want to know me, I'm Hakala Montreal. You can check the videos and just make a revision and make sure that you fully understand what I'm discussing and my work as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and philosopher, and also an artist who's financially stressed financially, but who has Asperger's, and who is presents the new theory known as the bipolar. It's a geopolitical strategy for the dominion of the 21st century political environment via the fusion of Canada and United States. So, how we're going to do it? We're going to do it by implementing the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory. DRT, the debt refusion theory, actually, I got to give a shout out to an anonymous acquaintance who years and years ago gave me a book. That book was semi-conspiratorial, but I read it a few times, especially while bathing. I got to take a bath today because I can't afford a massage therapy session. But hey, you know what? Finance millionaires, billionaires, finance those public workers, the firefighters of the North America and Canada, the firefighters, those who pick up the garbage also every day, the garbage and the compost. Got to be thinking about them. Gotta be thinking about them also, you know. So fine, I think they deserve it more than me, the firefighters, and those who are gonna pick up the compost and the recycling and the garbage. Monday, tomorrow is garbage day, and recycling day in the morning, garbage in the afternoon. So those who pick up the garbage, aka sanitation workers of North America, from Montreal to San Francisco, millionaires, billionaires, Wall Street. Think about them tomorrow while you do that buy trade, make a million, give 10%. Don't be so selfish. I'm not totally selfish, but I believe, and I know my TRT theory best, and the bipolar strategy for the North American collective dominance of the 21st century political environment via the fusion of Canada and the United States via the implementation of the DRT is best. So now that I am on it, I'm gonna hydrate. I'm gonna have a sip of this juice, have a sip of some food, and we're gonna get right away into the DRT, the debt refusion theory. So focus on the theory. Yes, personally, I'm with flaws, I'm with vices, I'm with scars. I survived COVID, survived being depressed and suicidal, survived being an Aspie, I guess. Welcome to the Aspie world. And not a lot of friends and unemployed. And well, I had many employments, many jobs, but the problem with Asperger's is the high unemployment rate. And that's what it is with that. So that's why we have to implement the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, and that's what we have to do ASAP. ASAP is as soon as possible today. It starts with me today on this 29th of June. And again, shout out to an anonymous friend. Hope that anonymous acquaintance, because paradoxically, this book, although was semi-conspiratorial, in it was financial elements. Of course, it discussed the ancient financial banking system of ancient Egypt, ancient Sumeria, ancient Babylon, ancient China, and of course the ancient British monarchy in Spain. And it was semi-conspiratorial. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but nonetheless, to be in regards to what it was, it had a lot of information in regards to the great financial recession, which happened between 2007, July 2007, and February 2010. The Great Recession that started July 2007 with a mortgage crisis, and of course, due to the collateral debt obligations and all that toxic financial instruments. Began in about July 2007 and ended about February 2010. But it had reverberations, even some reverberations, even for today, if you will, to put it on that complex of the internal complexities of that dynamics of it being like that. And so basically, the book had great information, but it equated that great financial. It was semi-conspiratorial, and it equated that financial crisis was major importance, and it was created by somebody who had ties with the triads, the Chinese criminal underworld of China. This criminal underworld, specifically Hong Kong and other areas there in Hong Kong, because of the surname of this individual who had worked in finance for several years. I think it was since 1999 till 2008, 2000 until 2008. 2008 he left back to China. So it asserts that for more than 7 years he worked in finance in Canada, and he created certain theories and protocols and initiatives that helped the crisis. And because of his surname, supposedly that surname is linked to the Chinese triad criminal underworld of China, to the criminal. I don't know about that. I'm not an expert in criminology. I know that what I do know is that nation states can employ underworld criminal organizations to foment internal civil unrest and riots and resentments between our communities. Of course, since we're such a diverse communities, just in my neighborhood and just my neighbors, I try to get along with my neighbors as much as I can, although I'm neurodivergent, but I have black neighbors, actually several black neighbors who live just the next house, and just French Canadians like myself, Quebecer, Canadian, North American, but just to say that I'm in a very diverse neighborhood. So that stated, here Montreal is just diverse by itself. But the point is that in that book, it was a bit of conspiracy theory, which I don't totally align with, but there was very valid financial banking information, and 1/3 about of my DRT theory stems from me writing. I wrote on that book because I got it for the Christmas, I think. Christmas 2018. For the holidays, 2018. 2018, the holidays. So last year I had to renounce it because I just read it and wrote on it, and unfortunately I kind of wrote too much on it, and it was no longer legible, and it was all torn up because of reading and reading and reading. So I kind of have it in my head. But the point is, the DRT comes from that. So I wish the anonymous acquaintance, anonymous acquaintance, wish to receive $1 million, $1 million for $1 million. It's worth it because that's paradoxically spawns the DRT theory. By the DRT theory, we're going to be able to save and establish this bipolar New World Order for the North American Collective once we're going to have the implementation of the theories, and once we're going to, of course, have the North Americans Union and the fusion of Canada thereof via the DRT theory and the creation of the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions. In order for the formulation of the creation of the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, of course, for the 21st century dominion of the political world, but in a defense, SSD, security service and defense complex, parallel, of course, with the propositions of perhaps adopting a non-interference outside the empire, the kingdom, in other external matters, which we can see, or we can go, or interfering in certain ways by direct population consensus and census in the course of actions when we're going to implement once that point arrives in time. And it starts with me today as I'm calling for the North American leaders, corporate and public and private of Canada, United States, of the 10 provinces, 50 states and 3 territories to meet me and sign these new accords on September 11th on Mount Royal. September 11th on Mount Royal, September 11th on Mount Royal. Hopefully by that time I'm going to get engaged. And I hope to get a yes. I guess the third time, eh? I got 2 no's. I'm going to do like Biden, keep on asking. Trump, that granddaddy Trump, I would have definitely voted for Biden. Would have voted for Biden, but you're not my enemy, and we're not enemies, and I'm a Democratic Republican, and That's it, that's all. You know, that's it, that's all. The DRT, the bipolar strategy, the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the 21st century dominion of politics via the imperial dominion, via the fusion of Canada and the United States, via the implementation of the DRT, CIT, and the DFT. What is the DRT? The debt refusion theory stands for D debt, R refusion, T theory. It is my theory which can salvage the North American collective, because Canada and the United States were both in a great economic, financial, commercial circumstance where we are at crisis. Myself, I don't have credit cards, but we are facing a double trouble crisis. A record credit card debt. The cost of living keeps increasing. The cost of living keeps increasing even now, even today, Walmart, the cost of prices keeps increasing, the rents, homelessness, and all the economic financial problems, which is unacceptable for us. But this fusion, this implementation of my DRT will bring some on the table for the public-private partnership in order to salvage it, and the Dragonomy to be only for SSD, security, service, and defense for the 21st century. And we're going to build the 4 to have sports in perpetuities, and we're going to rebuild the bridges, the roads, the aqueducts, and create the 2 complementary covenant and cooperative institutions via the DRT. The DRT, debt refusion theory, is the solution, or something very, very similar to my DRT theory. For both Canada and the United States, we find ourselves in a similar economic, financial, commercial situation where the majority of the individuals are financially stressed due to the two problems, financial economic problems. One is the high indebtedness. Oh my goodness. Baltimore 28, San Francisco 6. Baltimore. But see, this was in 2013, but my I don't remember my life prior to personal life, because language and mathematics and other skills are not affected by retrograde amnesia. I just have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014, 2015. It's kind of like blackouts. 28-6. Wow, Baltimore. That's 28 minus 6. That's 22. It's the third period in the Super Bowl, also known as Harbaugh Ball, Blackout Ball, or Bro Ball. It is Super Bowl 47. Super Bowl 47. Super Bowl 47. Super Bowl 47. That's what the number was. Super Bowl 47. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory, we have to implement it because both Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the United States are in a very majority of the population is financially stressed. One is the high indebtedness, credit card, and the second part is the growing cost of living. Every day, every week, there's an increase in the cost of goods. Even now, my anonymous friend, who wasn't my friend because of the money, I never had any. If I make $1 billion, I'm going to give $1.5 million, half 50. But the problem is, even now, the public transit pass, the pass, is going to increase July 1st from $100 to $104.50. So that's 4.5%. But the majority of the salary did not increase as much. Everything keeps going up in prices, while the majority of the salaries have stagnated. That's the problem. That's why we're going to need to mass finance citizens' fitness, mass finance my workout training program by a mass consortium of public and private partnership institutions. My brother, the Scorpio Bill Gates, with the big tech, and big corporations and big universities and high school, to mass finance citizens. Let's say they go for a walk for an hour, and we have tracking devices that can track, of course, we can build new computers, we can build new servers, we can build these new public-private partnership mass computers across the 63 for the Dragonomy, whence we can monitor overall everything that's coming in together, everything that's coming in by the ships, by the ports, by the airports, by the ports, by the airports, by the ports, by the airports. And if a citizen goes to volunteer and do some volunteering and do some marching, for now we credit some UEs, because we're going to create this new currency, the new dollar, or the UE, the U.Dot Universal Exchange. We're going to mass finance citizens' fitness and tourism for the rehabilitation, and we're going to set an interest rate level of 10%, and we're going to, of course, create this new 10% complex. There we go. The third period is 13 minutes and 22 seconds left. It's like half of the stadium, exactly almost symmetrically, half, 50-50, goes completely dark, black, with no power, no electricity. is a blackout. That's why it's also known as the blackout ball, just kind of like my memory prior to 2014. But what's important is the work here, all this work here, all this work, and all my push-ups, my hawks, my tears, blood, sweat, and tears until today, 29th of June. The anonymous acquaintance who gifted me that book, who partially 1/3 inspired this DRT theory, may win the lotto, may win the lotto, may win the lotto, may win the lotto, because partially, paradoxically, that book, although it's semi-conspiratorial, and I don't believe in conspiracy theories, or the genre of conspiracy theories, not that much, although I find some of them very entertainment, very amusing, but nonetheless, the DRT theory is 1/3 spawned from that. So the DRT theory now explained. And we have to, it's an emergency, we have to implement the DRT theory because there's no other solution, no other choice. We're on the verge of an economic, financial collapse. It could start tomorrow. The stock market crash of the end of June, 30th. Today is the 29th of June. Tomorrow's the 30th of June. There could be an economic crash tomorrow. DRT, debt refusion theory. The DRT, the debt refusion theory, integrates in it monetary integration theory. What is monetary integration theory? Is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union by the Europeans in the 1990s. The Germans, they created, of course, they destroyed their national central banks. And they no longer have, the Germans, the Italians in Italy, in Germany, in France, many other countries in Europe, no longer have their own national central banks and their own national currencies. They have a common multinational bank, and of course they issued the euro, and they created the ECB. So in my debt refusion theory, the DRT, there's included something in it. The DRT, the debt refusion theory, includes, of course, monetary integration theory, which of course is the appellation, which of course we're going to have to be setting to implement as soon as possible. So what is the DRT? The debt refusion theory is the DRT. D for debt, R refusion, T for theory. It includes monetary integration theory. So inside my DRT, the debt refusion theory, in it is integrated MIT, not to be confused with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but is integrated the monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory and theorem which was implemented in the European Union. The Germans, the Italians destroyed their national central banks, so along with other countries, they destroyed the national central banks. They created a multinational central bank, the ECB, European Central Bank, and they issue now the euro. The euro. In the 90s, they did it. They implemented the monetary integration theory, MIT, known in finance as the monetary integration theory, which is integrated in my DRT theory. So now I'm going to explain the DRT theory. This is one of the theories which is part of the strategy, the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the 21st century political dominion via the fusion, imperial dominion via the fusion of Canada and the United States via the implementation of the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, the CIT, citizen integration theory, and the DFT, the democratic fusion theory, and of course via some love, LOVE. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, Canadians, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So this theory, we're going to implement it binationally. Canada, United States joint, so simultaneously. Let's start September 11th, or let's start tomorrow, July 3rd, whenever, it's ASAP. We're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all that debt, we're going to convert it into US dollars. All the Canadian public private debt, we're going to add it with the US dollars. That money and the money circulation, we're going to create a new central bank. Canada, United States, other countries, Mexico, blah, 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 can join. Haiti, and for Haiti to join the North American community in the past years, about 7 years ago, I started writing, 6 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, something like that, 2018-ish, I started writing the protocols, initiative, public-private partnership, North American-centric base, called the AAT for Haiti to become a artistic, athletic, and tourism economic zone integrated in North America via also creating this new currency, the ATT complex. So A stands for athletic, A artistic for arts, athletics, arts, and tourism complex for special economic zone. Just like they have the EEC, the special economic zone. So to have a special economic zone, Canada, United States supported for the integration of Haiti and of course other countries. Cuba is the paradox, the socialist communists, but Dominican Republic and Jamaica, and Barbados, the islands, and the North American sphere. But this DRT, the debt refusion treaty, is for Canada, United States first. So all the debt, public and private debt of Canada, converted into US dollars, we're going to add it with the debt, public and private debt of the United States. That money and the money in circulation which exists is going to be the initial new money supply for a new currency for Canada, United States, which we're going to call the UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot unit. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot unit. The UE, the UE, the UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot unit. The universal exchange unit. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot unit. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. You could call it the new dollar if you will, whatever, the UE, because that's what money is. That's what the Canadian dollar is for. That's what the United States dollar is for. That's what the euro is for. The yuan is for. The shekel is for. It's an exchange unit to buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. So this is going to be, of course, predominantly, mostly, of course, digital as well. That's why you need to build new servers. Public-private partnership, my brother Scorpio, Bill Gates is going to be a new currency. We could have paper and document as well, but mostly biometrics. The eye and the hand are unique biometrics identifiers as well. And of course we're going to create the UE universal exchange. We're going to set a plateau of interest rates. It's not going to be able to be more than 10%. 10%. So it's going to be 10% maximum. That it could be below 10% but not higher after we implement. So no more credit cards which are 25.44, 25.44% or more, 26% or more. It's going to be 10%. 10%. It's gonna be 10%. 10% is gonna be 10%. 10%. That's what it's gonna be. 10%. 10% is going to be the maximum plateau which is going to be allowed, the maximum plateau which is going to be allowed. So 10% is going to be not be able to be more than 10%. It could be less than 10%, but not more. So that's going to be the new financial reality, maximum 10% thereafter. What we're going to do with this money, we're going to get rid of the border by implementing the DRT, get rid of the border. We're going to, of course, create a new passport for the 63, 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories. We're going to do a mass census for across the 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories, see whoever has been living here in the past 7 years and give some amnesty, give some to be for potential citizenship by serving, for example, to build the 44 tunnels, because we need to mass build in Quebec, Canada, United States, across the 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories, 44 mass tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war for the continuity of the North American civilizational complex. In case of a thermonuclear war, we need to start mass building those 44 tunnels, which are partly inspired by the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. The Cheyenne Mountain Complex is, of course, the NORAD headquarters, and of course also the Montreal Underground Village, and parallel to the Montreal Underground Village, also paradoxically, although of course I'm no Hamas supporters, I do not support Hamas. My theories and strategies are fundamentally for the North American centric, for Canada, United States joining together and fusing first and foremost. That is most of my work and my way to fuse in the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdoms best by implementing the DRT. But paradoxically also those 44 tunnels for North America they're also inspired by the tunnels which supposedly they run about between 350 kilometers and 550 kilometers underneath Gaza. And of course, they were built since 2007 till now, till last year, I guess, in the past years, in more than 17 years since Hamas took power in June 2007, I believe. Hamas took power because they were not really in power before that. Although they were created in the 80s, they were not empowering Gaza until about June 2007, if I'm not mistaken, double check. But that's when Hamas took power of Gaza Strip, and of course they build those tunnels, hundreds of kilometers and miles underneath Gaza. And we need to build tunnels which can sustain some millions of the population, and the Wall Street has to support it, and billionaires have to support a public-private partnership to build these 44 tunnels in case we have a thermonuclear war in Europe or outside in China, because we see the paradoxical rearmament, call it a great paradox of the East and the West. In the West, we have another taboo which was broken, the rearmament of Germany, because after the Second World War, the imperialistic, militaristic Nazi Germany has, of course, been imposed after the Second World War, the defeat in 1945, that Germany is not going to have a strong military. And of course that taboo has been broken now in the past 3.5 years with the Russia invading Ukraine. And in parallel, another taboo has been broken in the past 5 years, is the rearmament of Japan. Japan was also imperialistic, militaristic, and of course, don't forget Pearl Harbor. The Imperial Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the United States, which a priori to that surprise attack in December 7, 1941, the United States was pretty much more isolationist and did not really have a strong military. Paradoxically, it's one of my lectures in about 3 or 4 years ago. Unwilling Empire. It's called Unwilling Empire. Unwilling Empire. Unwilling Empire. How Pearl Harbor changed the destiny of the United States military complex, industrial military complex, which came afterwards. Historical events, great geopolitical historical events, which mark certain transition of a worldwide. So, so that is a geopolitical strategy which has to be formulated. And we have to implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory, and we will. We really have to. It takes a public-private partnership, and it takes this new Democratic Republican North American Collective Workers Party. Let's get the NACWP for the Public Phoenix, aka the Phoenix People's Party, a centrist, pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist. My centrism is tied hand in hand with my Trinity of theories, that's North American centric. My centrism, although it's pro-labor and pro-love, saluting the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, truckers on the road. The truckers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors. Always got to give a shout out to the truckers on the road across the 63. Those in the warehouse workers, those doing some of that construction work. The public workers now changing some aqueducts, some sewers, the first responders, and of course our brothers and sisters in that security. You know, you got to get that love, and you got to get some of that DRT theory, the debt refusion theory. We're going to implement it, and we're going to create this UE. So again, all the public-private debt of Canada together, we're going to add it all together. We're going to convert it to the US dollars. We're going to add it with all the public-private debt of the United States. And that is going to be the initial money supply for this new central bank. And we're going to issue the UE, U.Universal, U.Exchange, U.Unit, the Universal Exchange Unit. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. 10%, no more max, no more than 10% afterwards is going to be the new financial reality. We're going to rebuild the infrastructure, the bridges, the sewers, the pedestrian areas, the roads, the highways. By creating this, we're going to mass finance public works across the 63, the 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories. Thank you, public workers. Gonna sing that rock and roll for the building of the 44. And you know, if you need to be some washing feet, you know, integrated on the terrain, blah blah blah, XYZ, don't want nothing to do about it if it's not about the work of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, you know. And of course, we're gonna mass finance the building of the North American People's Imperial Coliseum. Once me and Donald Trump, we're gonna fight in a sportsmanship. Keep his sportsmanship with Granddaddy Trump. I'm going to keep his sportsmanship, and we're going to build the most massive building ever for sports and perpetuities on the Canadian-US border, where universities, high schools, and NFL, NHL, NBA, and UFC, and all sports institutions, men and women and beyond. We're going to make another third category, of course, if need be, you know. Yours truly, I love to dance, but I'm going to fight Donald Trump in a boxing match, and we're going to build it on the Canadian-US border to have sports and perpetuities for our security forces to come, of course, for our firefighters, for all our industries, and that we have. We're going to get free tickets and go, and we're going to organize weekly events for all of our North American collective workers, sometimes for the butchers, sometimes for the bakers, sometimes for the nurses, sometimes for the firefighters, sometimes for the police officers, sometimes, of course, for the construction workers, for the plumbers, sometimes for the electricians, sometimes for the welders, sometimes for the cooks, and sometimes for geopolitical theoreticians. Scholars like myself also loves that fitness, so we're going to build it on the Canadian-US border, the North American Imperial People's Coliseum, and the Forgotten Goddess Temple. GeoDDSS. Touchdown, what happened? Who scored? San Francisco scored. It's 28-13. Super Bowl 47. I'm watching here on the Super Bowl 47 is what I'm watching, because sometimes I get inspired by that Super Bowl, how the strategies, if you observe, you got to watch it carefully, how of course there was some time management involved, and how there was defense and offense coalescing, and of course a more defensive game, of course, but only it was both defense and offense actually. So that is partly also why the paradox of why I put this in one of my 5-star stop Super Bowl 47, where paradoxically San Francisco lost by 3 points, but nonetheless I find it a good both offensive and defensive game, and it's also known as the Harbor Bowl. So that's on the screen on to my right. Sometimes I glaze because I formulate some strategies surrounding it, but paradoxically my own memory, I don't remember going to see it myself because my memory is blacked out since I remember 2015, 2014. I go spring, but then that's it. Anyways, that's not really what matters the most. Is my work, and coming out of depression, losing between 80 and 93 pounds, and getting some of that loving today. I'm happy, joyous for the food, and I'm happy to present the DRT really because it is the solution, and I gotta focus with solution. For me, for a solution would be to have double extra joy, to have some friends with benefits, to offer me a good massage, just a good massage therapy session. That's what I need. But you know what? Firefighters across the 63 now, there are 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories. If you're married or not married or dating with daters, firefighter, give them some massages, And the plumbers, the electricians, the train conductors, truckers on the road, finance the truckers on the road, some good massage therapy session, blah, 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 tra-la-la, ling-a-ling. And we got to get it for the DRT, debt fusion tree, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, to get it on the go and get it on the now, because sometimes that's what we got to do. And we got to focus on the bipolar strategy for the North American collective unity and union for the 21st century geopolitical dominance, imperial dominance, via the implementation of my DRT theory, which I'm going to go again discuss it now. And now I'm going to take a little bit of that wine. So the DRT, debt fusion theory, also integrates monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, yours, we're going to add it coast to coast, ocean to ocean. All that public and private debt, we're going to convert it into US dollars. US dollars, we're going to add it with the United States dollar. We're going to create this new currency by all the money, public-private partnership added together, and the money in circulation to create a new currency called the UE. U.universal, E.exchange, U.unit. U.universal, E.exchange, U.unit. The UE, the UE, the UE. U.universal, E.exchange, U.unit. The universal exchange unit is going to be on the formulation, of course, to create this new currency via this public-private partnership, and in order to have dominion, and of course to be the currency for the fusion of this new union, which we're going to fuse Canada and United States, and we're going to create the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions to be integrated with all existing public and private institutions, the Dragon Army, aka North American Integrated Security and Service Defense Legion, SSD Legion, and implement the total mobile defense theory, and of course based on my new 911 Dragon North American collective protocols for total security, total service, total defense. And of course we're going to rebuild the infrastructure. We're going to mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise, mass finance fitness via of course applications and technologies which we have about. We can finance that, and of course register what biometrics, the hand, the voice, and the eye, to be for the creation of this new UE, Universal Exchange Unit. And also it could be also paper and coin like we have today, but also digital, and we can mass finance citizens to work out. We can mass finance citizens to volunteer. We can have a social credit score, which we're going to have incentives. Some incentives have to be given socially, culturally, and that's why it takes all the organizations, public and private, which of course complement now, to also to create the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the North American Integrated Dance League, to dance and to clean the environment, and to make sure that proper recycling is being done, and to take the citizenry to go. I never been myself. I always wanted to go. I wrote a lot of blah blah blah, sometimes bureaucracy, and it takes some will and volition, but to see how recycling is done, we know it goes in a truck, but we have to go to where, so these activities, the social integration across the 63, to be integrated fully in all aspects of our civilizational conduct, for all the recycling, to see how it's done and to see how it goes, and of course to have those activities in the North American Imperial Coliseum, which we're going to build on the Canadian-US border. And me and Donald Trump, of course, we're going to fight in a boxing match. We're going to fight in a sportsmanship boxing match. I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since, of course, 2018, when Donald Trump made the mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, just like now with the ending of the trade talks. Now I'm going to make a geopolitical statement, but just to finalize what we're going to do with the creation of the UE via the implementation of my DRT, debt fusion theory, we're going to mass finance citizens' fitness. We're going to mass finance people to work out, train, exercise. We're going to mass finance citizens' conduit, and mass finance tourism across the 63 in our tourism for North American intercoalition, and of course to coalesce and establish a strong esprit de corps with the Imperial 63 legions, and of course for the all who come to join us here in the great family of the new civilizational complex, which is North America. We formulate Canada, United States, a new civilizational complex. My brothers and sisters, the king is absent. The king is absent. We're going to mass finance the building thereof, of the buildings of highways, rebuild the highways, and build those 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war. We're going to implement the North American Strategic Criminal Rehabilitation Act and do a census. We have to do a census and see everybody who's been living here for, let's say, 5 or 7 years, to give some amnesty, to make them, of course, put some good working in building those tunnels or volunteering for the environment or for other procedural, whatever XYZ needs to be done, because we got a lot of work to do. And physical activity is something which is a great component of our mental well-being. And of course tourism, we're going to mass finance tourism. We're going to mass finance tourism, mass finance physical activity. We're going to create this new superstructures, of course, for total defense. We're going to build, of course, those tunnels, and we're going to build the golden, we're going to add in the Golden Dome, we're going to add the HAWK, H-A-W-K, to include Canada in the defense strategy, of course, in the spatial defense strategy, to be able to, of course, intercept ICBM rockets, in order to be able to intercept ICBM rockets, ICBM rockets. So we got a lot of work to do. The DRT, and of course the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, which has to go with the DRT, is this, of course, the integration of the citizens in the Dragonomy complex, of course, to be as volunteers for either building those 44 tunnels or for whatever other work needs to be done, as we're going to fuse Canada and United States, and we're going to establish a dominion. We're going to have access to all points of food servicing, and all the hotels and motels, all the food servicing, the fast food institution. They got to join the public-private partnership, and of course, there's the North American Property Reclamation Act to get the hotels and the motels in order to implement these two complementary covenant institutions, as we're going to merge and fuse for the collective and do lots of good and lots of rock and roll and lots of dancing and lots of fitness and lots of healing and rehabilitation, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. And we're going to rebuild the North American inner urban cities, aka the ghettos of North America. We're going to rebuild them by the DRT as a North American strategy. Bipolar strategy. Oh, I gotta love the good food. Thank you, grateful, thankful, rent paid, electricity bills paid, and July 1st coming, so we're gonna have to get that rehabilitation. And the DRT, debt fusion tree, for the creation of the U, is fundamentally something which we have to establish, and concordium, of course, in the appellation of the future propositions, when we have to formulate and integrate across all levels of civilization via, of course, the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, and the DFT, the Democratic Fusion Theories, of course, the North American-centric public-private partnership base, my Universal Revolutionary Centrist, which is pro-labor, pro-love, and of course, it's North American-centric, primarily for the bipolar new world, new geopolitical order, the bipolar, not as in psychiatric, psychological sense, but in the bipolar, the fusion of Canada thereof, where we have the imperial dominance of the 21st century, concordium, and is the beginning by the DRT, the debt fusion theory, and the beginning, of course, of the North American Union and the Canada, United States. The king is absent. King is absent. You can come ask us for a visa next time if he wants to come. You can come ask us for a visa next time if he wants to come. We're gonna fuse together. We're gonna create a passport and get rid of the border. We're gonna create mass plateaus for total security, total surveillance, and total defense. For SSD, the SSD by the DRT, and the creation of the UE. For total S, total security, total service, total defense. SSDs. That's why the 63 legions in each state is going to serve for SSD, integrated with all existing institutions and organizations. We're going to move in security, service, and defense, and mass finance citizens' fitness activity and rehabilitation of the public spaces of the 63, the 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories, by creation, of course, the parks, by embellishment, by painting in different colors, red, white, blue, whatever the case may be, with stars and with maple leaves. And of course, we got stars and maple leaves, and we're going to fuse them together. Fuse in my way best, the public-private partnership. We're going to build these massive centers for where we're going to have, of course, citizens engagement, and we're going to build webcams, add more webcams, and across the 63 we're going to have centers where, of course, we're going to have the monitors to see all the work that's being done in the public, the building of the 44 tunnels all across the 63, 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories, all the sports where people can go volunteer and where there's needed. And we're going to have, of course, all the information of all the ships coming in, the ports, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, Montreal to San Francisco, and the airports for total security, total service, total defense, the new plateau for the new 911 integrated security and service and defense protocols. Yours truly, Rainbow Dragon, philosopher, artist, athlete, geopolitical theoretical analyst, and theorist. And that was enough for today. The introduction, I guess, of this coming series in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. The bipolar new geopolitical order via my strategies, the DRT as a debt refusion theory, as a geopolitical bipolar strategy for the total dominion in geopolitics and politics of the fusion, via the fusion of Canada and United States into a democratic republic, a public-private partnership strong based, LOVE,